Early in December, on International Day of Persons with Disabilities, the Slate Family Foundation announced that they would be donating $30 million to 11 innovative and leading organizations in advocacy and healthcare for Canadians with disabilities. Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital is one of the organizations receiving a portion of this donation, and they will be using the funds to develop life changing technologies for the healthcare sector. Today, Sandra Hawken, the CEO of Holland Bloorview, will be here to tell us about how this donation will impact the hospital, its partners, and the technology that it will help them develop. I'm Grant Hardy. You're listening to The Pulse on AMI Audio. Sandra, thank you so much for your time today. And I just wanted to start by asking you to introduce yourself, chat a little bit about yourself and what led you to joining Holland Bloorview Foundation.
Thanks, Grant. It's so wonderful to meet you today and really grateful to be included on your show. I am Sandra Hawken, and I'll give a visual description of myself for folks who are watching. I am a very middle-aged, maybe a little more than middle-aged, white woman with dark blonde hair up in a bun today, and I am wearing a purple t-shirt that says Imagine a world where disability is included. I am the president and CEO of the Holland Bloorview Foundation, and I feel like I might have the best job in Toronto. I joined Holland Bloorview 9 years ago, and have just the great honor and privilege of leading our foundation to both increase awareness about the importance of eliminating disability stigma and increasing disability inclusion in all of our efforts, but also inspiring Canadians to give generously to help kids and families living with disabilities at Holland Bloorview and with our most recent gift, Beyond.
Brilliant. Thanks for the excellent introduction there. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes Holland Bloorview unique?
Yeah, it's a really special place. Anyone who's been inside of our building will say that it is one of the places where kids with disabilities have the opportunity to be their full, authentic self. And what you will see is not a clinical place where it feels cold or intimidating, but children and youth of all ages being mischievous and laughing and making friends. And whether they're there for physiotherapy or occupational therapy, or they're there to participate in a robotics program or a music program or to do swimming lessons, it really is a place that believes in creating possibilities and that everyone deserves a fullest and meaningful future. We're the largest and only hospital in Canada that is focused exclusively on supporting youth with disabilities. And we are the teaching hospital that trains developmental pediatricians. And our research institute, the Bloorview Research Institute, has the highest concentration of childhood disability research anywhere in the world.
Thank you. Could you touch on, you mentioned Beyond at the start of the interview. Can you touch on that campaign?
Mm-hmm. So we, on December 3rd, International Day of Persons with Disabilities and Giving Tuesday, we were so incredibly grateful to announce that the Slate Family Foundation made a historic philanthropic investment in disability in Canada. So it's historic because it's the largest gift, totaling $30 million, focused on disability. And the Beyond that I referenced earlier connects to the fact that this is a gift that Holland Bloorview and the Rick Hansen Foundation partnered with the Slate Family Foundation to really craft a national disability initiative that would include a range of other organizations beyond just Holland Bloorview. So there's 11 in total that span the continuum of needs philanthropically that we can all make impact together. And Holland Bloorview is one of the co-leads of this national group and the recipient of 10.5 million of the gift. And the majority of our gift is being used to take the special sauce of Holland Bloorview's and spread it beyond our walls so that some of the most important work that we do can benefit kids, youth, and adults from across the country.
Yeah, and this is really cool. And we're going to get into just some of the many new initiatives that you and your partners are going to be implementing based on this historic gift. But I just wanted to ask, uh, you referenced your the shirt you're wearing related to disability inclusion, and according to Holland Bloorview stats, despite the pervasiveness of disability in the community, there exists just so many barriers still to treatment, to work, to acceptance. Maybe can you talk about how we can address those barriers and maybe how some of the initiatives you're going to be implementing will assist with that?
Absolutely. Um, One of the things that I always find interesting in my work in building a bridge to the community to uh, inspire them to want to get involved in making a difference in disability inclusion is that many folks will start off the conversation framing it in an EDI lens. So they'll say, my company is doing lots of great things in equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Mm,
And when I ask about disability, they have a moment where often, but not always, they hadn't considered disability as part of that work. And I think that's beginning to change. And certainly we hope by virtue of some of the initiatives that the Slate Family Foundation are funding, it will continue to change. But I believe that this is Holland Bloorview is not going to be the organization to solve this all alone. And it really is about bringing together organizations, people with lived experiences, and having conversations, whether that is in classrooms, at boardroom tables, at kitchen tables, and in general, in terms of what each of us as Canadians can be doing to self-reflect, what policies need to be changed, what funding needs to be increased. When I think about the kids at home, Bloorview, some of the stats that are most sobering to me are those around the disproportionate experience of bullying
mhm.
or the percentage of kids with disabilities that have 0 or 1 close friends. I had a conversation recently with one of the Holland Bloorview ambassadors, a youth who's received services at Holland Bloorview for some time, and he was super excited that he was invited to his first birthday party. And when we talk about inclusion, there's the big I inclusion. There is the ramps into buildings. There is making pathways to jobs. There is ensuring that everything in Canada is accessible to everybody. But there's also about remembering belonging is just as important as inclusion, and thinking about inviting the kid in your youth classroom who has a difference to a party
Mhm.
is makes all the difference and has a ripple effect that you can't begin to know. So it's really everyday actions as well as systemic actions, and it can't happen in isolation.
Yeah, oh, 100%. And just eliminating that fear, just those attitudinal barriers about like, oh man, something could go wrong at this birthday party, so I'm just gonna ignore this person instead of chat with them, chat with the family, see how we can create a more inclusive environment. And that's really where education comes in, and the great work that organizations like you guys are doing. So let's talk about some of the really exciting initiatives that are coming. This one is super interesting to me just because assistive tech has changed my life uh, more than I can possibly say. So let's talk about brain computer interface technology, what it is, and why it's exciting.
So I think that brain computer interface is the perfect way to describe it is it's where science meets love, meets a little bit of science fiction. Dr. Tom Chow, who is the former head of the Holland Bloorview Research Institute and one of our senior scientists, developed the application of brain-computer interface for the pediatric population at Holland Bloorview. And he's been working on this for far more than a decade. And we're really excited that over the last couple of years, we've taken this technology out of the lab and into the clinic and now beyond. Essentially, what this technology is it takes engineering brilliance and builds an algorithm where anyone can use their brain activity, so their thoughts and their brain activity, to manipulate a computer that will allow everything from steering of a wheelchair to managing a communication device to painting to blowing bubbles with a bubble machine to fostering meaningful inclusion by virtue of technology. What I love most about brain-computer interface is it's as much about opening up the world for people who previously did not have technology or pathways to participate fully, as it is about opening up these folks to the world, because individuals who otherwise didn't have a pathway to communication, who to participate in video games with their siblings, we have an opportunity to have their thoughts, their feelings, their ideas considered and to fully participate. And so we have a program at Home Bloorview where kids participate in using brain-computer interface in our clinic, where our researchers are continuously pushing the envelope to create even more interesting applications. And the Slate Family Foundation gift is ensuring that children's treatment centers right across the province through Empower Kids Ontario are now going to have access to brain-computer interface. And the funding is also allowing us at Holland Bloorview to hire another scientist to make sure that we are going to be developing even more interesting applications. And every one of those applications that we choose to develop is not something that happens because we have a clever engineer that thinks, ooh, wouldn't this be cool? It happens because somebody with a disability says, this is what I need, solve it, please. And that's the power of technology.
Yeah, 100%. And that sort of leads me to another question here. Obviously, people know what they need, so that's not the hard part. But when we're talking about development, training, the engineering that's required to develop this technology, but also to teach it, what kind of training do you have to have for this to be useful?
So one of the things that was really important to us at Holland Bloorview when we were developing this is to make it so that we reduce the number of barriers that existed. So rather than developing a really complex, bespoke headset, we are using something that's off the market that you could buy online. And so that we can reduce how complex it is. But that doesn't mean that there isn't some training that's needed. So part of what we're going to be doing with all of the children's treatment centers represented by Empower Kids Ontario is helping the clinicians learn how to use the headset in a way that it's really comfortable. Because if it's not comfortable for the youth, they're not going to want to use it. Helping them train and work with the youth and adults who are using the headsets to use brain-computer interface to make sure that it is fun. It is. Some kids can figure out how to use it in one session alone, but it's a bit like learning mindfulness. Not all of us are ready for it, or need a little bit of practice. And we actually find that kids are quicker to adopt brain-computer interface work and being able to quiet their mind. And so the training includes everything from how to best fit a headset, how to troubleshoot the software that
Mhm.
is being used, knowing when to flag, oh, I might need an engineer to support with this, and how to make it a really positive, warm experience with our kids and youth so that they don't feel like this is an othering thing, but this is just the coolest new tool that they have to be able to be the fullest version of themselves.
Yeah, speaking of that, can I just ask you, like, what kind of reactions have you heard about or do you get from people who are trying this out for the first time?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. There's sort of count. I'll tell two stories. That's probably the best way to demonstrate the reactions. Last summer, we have a camp at Holland, Bloorview called Spiral Garden, and it's a reverse integrated camp built first around the needs of kids with disabilities and then adapted for kids without disabilities. And it's this fun arts-based camp, and we do all of these great things. And we had a youth that was part of the camp last summer who used brain computer interface technology. And our team had put together a number of things that they knew that they would be participating in, like making art and playing video games and things like that. But one day, the whole group wanted to plant. And there was no way for that youth to participate in planting, given their mobility device and other access pathways. And so our team said that's unacceptable. And so they built a switch that could work with a garden hose so that the brain computer interface could turn off and on a garden hose. And
Awesome.
you know what this child did? It's a little boy who was under 10, and he spent the whole day spraying his friends and his camp counselors because that's what kids do.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love that story so much is the reaction is you get to just be you. You get to just be a kid.
Oh, heck yeah.
It's so amazing. We've had another youth who had been a passive participant in many of his family's activities and things that they did for fun. And the first time that he used brain computer interface was to play a video game so that he'd be able to compete against his brother. And his mom was in the room, and he chose to play a game where a game icon leapt and jumped. And this was a youth who had been in a wheelchair his entire life, and he got to jump and run for the first time and beat his brother at a game. So his brother was like, couldn't believe it. And his mom was crying. And this youth was just like, stand back, everybody. I got this. So the reactions are joyful, is the best word that I can describe. And Dr. Chow believes it's a human right to communicate. It's a human right to be a full participant in society, and that this is a human rights issue. And if we have access to the technology to dismantle the barriers, then we should. And he would love nothing more, as and I think anybody who's met anyone who's used brain computer interface technology, is to see somebody who uses this technology running our country, running some of our biggest companies. And we're hopeful that that's the future.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the hallmark of really the best assistive technology. You can use it to do the most amazing research, this and that, and let your hair down too from time to time. And that
right?
fantastic. And now it's expanding across the entire province as well. So congratulations on that. That's going to be just super. You could kind of touch on the future of the technology, but is there anything you'd like to add? Like, you think about just everyday assistive tech is getting better and better. Well, what's going to be the future?
Yeah, a lot of the work that we're doing that we're excited about in the future that's in the lab right now is having technology that's available broadly to people with disabilities to be able to steer wheelchairs. Right now we have a beta in our lab, and any of the kids who have used it are doing wheelies and are racing down the hall. But up until this point would have had somebody move their wheelchair on their behalf. And so providing that full autonomy is exciting. Now, one of the things that they're working on in our lab that I'm really jazzed about is there is a technology that we are researching at Holland Bloorview that was developed by commercial ventures, and it's called the Trexo. And many people may have been familiar with it from social media, and it's essentially an exoskeleton robot where folks who are not ambulatory prior can stand upright, and the machine helps move their limbs forward to be able to have walking motion. Now, the way that it works right now, though, is a physiotherapist or an assistant will program where you can go, and so we're looking at working on getting brain-computer interface connected into this technology so that you can think about where you want to walk and really have full autonomy using these exoskeleton robotic devices. So that's the future, and I'm sure next week there will be 7 more ideas that have come out of our lab, and we're excited about it.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. And looking forward to hearing more about some of the new tech developments. I want to touch on some of the other partnerships here, including March of Dimes Canada. Can we talk about how we're going to be able to foster arts and creative expression?
March of Dimes Canada is such a wonderful national organization, and Holland Bloorview has developed some evidence-based programs that currently are primarily offered at Holland Bloorview. We have adapted arts, adapted music, and we have a robotics program that's adapted for kids and youth with disabilities, making creativity and STEM accessible, fun, and part of building friendships and being fully creative. And we are going to be offering those programs in a box as well as training, and to be spread across the country so that kids, youth, and adults who access March of Dimes services in many of their locations are going to be offering Holland Bloorview's Arts Express, First Robotics, and a number of our other arts programs. One of the things that we found at Holland Bloorview is the kids that have the opportunity to participate in these programs, it has a huge positive impact not only on their therapeutic goals and their relationship goals, but also on their mental wellness and the power of self-expression and identity is significant. So we're very excited that March of Dimes is going to have access to those programs for so many more people.
Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to touch on your partnership with Ontario Disability Employment Network for some new and valuable employment opportunities.
Yeah, Project Search is an example of an employment program for people with intellectual disabilities and neurodiversity in their earliest career, where they spend a year at an employer and build job skills. Holland Bloorview and the Ontario Disability Employment Network brought it to Canada. It's been awarded internationally and in a number of countries. But thanks to the Slate Family Foundation funding, together we're going to expand it to nearly 20 more sites. And these are employers that are in the private sector and in the charitable sector and in the healthcare sector, where employers will have the opportunity to have the value added of young people in the workplace. So it's a pathway to employment for youth, but it's also a pathway to become a more inclusive employer for employers. And the funding is going to allow us to be able to support the employers, to be able to work with the school boards to ensure that the maximum number of youth have these opportunities that are going to build towards the future. I can say personally, the Holland Bloorview Foundation had a Project Search student in the very first cohort when we did this a number of years ago, who we hired as a permanent employee, and he is hands down everybody's favorite employee in the office. And so I hope that every employer that creates these pathways with Project Search through Ontario Disability Employment Network and Holland Bloorview have the same experience, and we can reduce underemployment in this specific population.
There's so many incredible initiatives happening that we could talk about, but where can people find out what's next, follow the journey?
So Holland Bloorview on our website is going to be updating the public on the journey of these 11 organizations who together are going to be working to amplify each other's work and make sure that the impact that we've promised is exceeded, and that there's some really strong collaborations and efforts to increase inclusion, dream new science, and really help support everyone's vision of a more inclusive Canada. So hollandbloorview.ca is the place where you can stay tuned to watch over the next 5 years this journey.
And it's going to be an incredible year. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It's been great being here.
Sandra Hawken is the CEO of Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. Our thanks to Sandra and Aaron from Holland Bloorview for their time and arranging the interview for us. On AMI Audio, you can catch the Pulse every 6 hours for the rest of the day, or you can watch it again on YouTube and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much for listening. I'm your host, Grant Hardy.